Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beer Man's Noble Beer Reviews. Today I have a beer from a brewing company that I think I've done collaborations with them before, but I don't think I've done a beer that was just made by them. This is from New Anthem Brewing Company out of Wilmington, North Carolina. This beer is called The Broken Tree, and you can see there it says Bourbon Barrel Aged Barleywine Ale. Or no, it doesn't say ale, just Bourbon Barrel Aged Barley Wine. And it is 10.4 ABV. It looks like it's pretty simple ingredients. It says water, English pale, English crystal, rye, and then target and golden hops. So pretty simple. I think cans of this were only like $6 or something crazy like that. So I hadn't had like any big beers from them. Usually just IPAs, and they're good. When someone If it was like higher priced, I don't know if I would have gotten it just because I hadn't had any of their bigger stuff and didn't know the quality of it. But for $6, you gotta try it. And this was also I don't know if any of you guys listen to DDB. He had this on his show a couple weeks ago. So it's definitely more like a newer barley wine in that it's not like the crazy side project ones that basically look like stouts. It's not that dark, but it is pretty dark brown. It's not transparent at all. You can't see through it. It had a small beige head that went away pretty quickly. It smells nice, and I will say I'm kind of glad that I haven't had a barley wine smell like this in a while, because usually it has like hardly any barrel, or it's just flooded with barrel, and you don't get like too much nuance from the beer. But this is definitely a good mix of both. I for sure get like the oaky vanilla character from the bourbon, but there's a lot of like dark fruit and caramel there too. And there's generally like just a waft of like alcohol, but I don't know if that's from the bourbon itself or the ABV of the beer, probably a combination of the two. It's only 10.4, which by today's standards isn't that big. It's interesting. It's pretty sweet, like even sweeter than most barley wines are. Because most barley wines are sweet to begin with, of course. It's really thick too, almost like syrupy. I will say it's kind of that syrupy character is kind of odd too, given that, like it's. I know it had that head when it poured, but it feels like very undercarbonated, which I don't really think is a big knock for this style. But it's you notice how like syrupy a beer is when it's really undercarbonated too. It even has like a sheen or an oiliness on the top of it, which is interesting because a lot of times beers have that if there's like non-fermentable sugars in it, but that's obviously not the case here. So there's a lot of brown sugar. There's some vanilla from the bourbon, but it's not. It's almost like you get more of the ethanol from the bourbon rather than the actual depth of the barrel, which is kind of unfortunate. Uh, there's a little bit of like a woody character to it as well. Uh, it is. I know it's like such a common thing to say, but it is a little raisiny. But this one's definitely more like caramel and brown sugar than dark fruit. But I think that's because it's so sweet that it's making me think of caramel and brown sugar, of course, because those are sugars. Um, I'm trying to think of what this reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of the first barley wine that Bottle Logic did. Because the second one they did, Arcane Rituals, was fantastic. But the first one they did, I can't remember what it was called. I was not a big fan of it. It had like no complexity to it, and it was just insanely sweet. This kind of reminds me of that, but it's better than that because it's not as sweet and there's a little bit more complexity than that was. But it's still kind of similar to me in that the barrel doesn't have a ton going on with it or the beer. Overall, the flavor's nice and I enjoy drinking it, but it's not like anywhere near some of the better barrel-aged barley wines that I've had. It's kind of similar with stouts. Like, you can have a good barrel-aged stout, but when it doesn't have that super complex, like, fudgy and all that other, like, stuff going on with it, and it's kind of just like you get a lot of bourbon and then, like, some roasty malts underneath it, and that's it. Like, that's a fine drinking beer. I actually just did a beer like that last night from 11th Hour. It's fine, and it's definitely, like, that's the other thing. Because of how cheap this is, it's very, very good for the price. If price was no object, there's definitely better barrel aged barley wines available. I guess not necessarily just off the shelf though, because this was the shelf beer here. I'm trying to think. Like, you can find good barrel aged stouts on the shelf. Maybe not year round, but at least when Black Note comes out and Barrel Aged Expedition, and there's a couple other ones. Usually, even if they're not nationally, there's still ones from local breweries. But barley wines, not as much really. I can't. I know like Sierra Nevada does barrel aged not narwhal, Bigfoot every once in a while in like the 750 bottles, but I can't think of any that you can like consistently get locally where I'm at in Charlotte. I know like Trogs you can get Flying Mouflon once a year, but again it's not year round. Not that this is either, but so for $6 this is a steal. I mean, some breweries are charging $6 for IPA cans. I mean, $24 a 4-pack, like no joke. So when you compare that and the complexity you get out of this, and just how much this cost them to make probably versus what an IPA costs. I know IPAs are not that cheap because some of them are so flooded with hops, but still, this obviously, even outside of whatever it cost them to obtain the barrel and make the beer, all the opportunity costs as well for this sitting in barrels for however long it did. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, this is absolutely a buy for me at the price. If this was like, in the teens, I would say it might only be a drink. No, I would still call it a buy because I could get it easily locally. But yeah, I like to factor in. I don't factor in price too often, but whenever the price is like substantially expensive or substantially cheap, I think you have to factor it in as far as whether you would buy it again. And this is one of those examples. For $6, this is crazy good. So if you want like a good barrel aged barley wine, and someone who like lives around that brewery, or if they're distroed in North Carolina, you can get a 4-pack for $25. So that's where some barley wines cost $25 for one equivalent is 500 milliliters. So you gotta think of it that way too. Even if it's not quite as good, you can get 4 good beers out of it instead of 1. So that's definitely a steal. So on my scale of buy, drink, dump, like I was just saying, this is definitely a buy for me. They did a good job with it. It's not my favorite barrel aged barley wine in the world, but it is still a pretty good beer, and for the price, it's amazing, to be honest. So I think that's all I got on this one. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thanks.